Welcome to Female Founder Fridays, part of the TechIreland 100 million campaign for funding for female founders in Ireland. This is Niamh Bushnell, and today we are delighted to be talking to Anne-Marie McSorley from Veri. Welcome, Anne-Marie.
Thanks a million, Niamh. Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much for being here. So we've had a couple of discussions before we kind of turned on the camera and got this moving, and you've loads of great stories for us about your background and about the company, but maybe let's start with the company. Tell us about Veri.
So Veri is a mobile app and dashboard that digitises training compliance. Anybody that works in the training sector or even in the corporate sector, whether it's healthcare, construction, or even further education as professional educationists, they realise that there's a huge amount of mandatory paperwork for quality assurance. And that paperwork normally sits in a room somewhere waiting for an audit. But the value that's in that paper is huge because it has data all about the performance of your training. And what we've basically done is digitize that data. So we've created a process management system that allows you to analyze the return on your training investment. I always think that training is a bit like marketing. 50% works and 50% doesn't work, but people don't measure enough. And what Veri allows you to do is measure your training performance from your quality data and then remediate if there's a problem.
I love the fact that it's a mobile app with a dashboard because it makes something that sounds quite difficult and quite onerous and not very exciting, something that is accessible and convenient and that a training manager can actually kind of turn on and use, right?
Yeah, and I think a lot of people have seen e-learning coming into the space and realise that e-learning, although it's definitely a part of a blended learning mix, it's not the full solution. We work very much in the skills environment. So you can imagine on a construction site you have maybe 100 men and they all have different skill sets. But it's really important that the site supervisor has overview of not just their historical data or an online induction, which we can organise, but what happens on the site, real time. So toolbox talks, remediations, problems, audits, all of that data is coming back to one dashboard and then can be tracked against the quality system. Normally in training, in construction that might be ISO, with our current clients in further education training that would be QQI, City and Guilds. So it's really about using the data from a quality system to track and trace your training performance.
Great. And this didn't kind of come to you in the middle of the night out of nowhere. You have a whole career in training that built you up to this point, right? Give us that background as well.
So I lived in Northern Ireland for 15 years and I worked with some big companies. I worked with the National Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children up there, and you can imagine that compliance would be very important in that sector in training and education. I worked for Compass Catering, which is part of Eurest, a huge company. Again, health and safety, hugely important. And then I worked in local government, and again, in Northern Ireland, a lot of things are funded, so there's always this huge amount of paperwork for funding compliance in the delivery of programmes. And when I came home about 12 or 13 years ago to my mum and with my 3 kids.
Back down in Kilkenny, right?
Kilkenny, yeah. I didn't know what I was going to do, to tell you the truth, but I became a quality manager in a local further education college, and I then set up my own training company, and I basically started doing delivering what I used to require on the other side in the corporate life. So my training company is about 10 years old, and then about 4 or 5 years ago, during the deepest part of the recession, we had a very successful program called Kickstart, and that program required a huge amount of paper because we had State Street Bank, we had the Department of Social Protection involved, and we had Kilkenny Leader Partnership. And I knew that it was very crucial. It was, our last big contract in the middle of the recession. We really needed it. And I wasn't able to track it because it involved a lot of different elements. It involved on-the-job placement and classroom learning, and so I went and decided that I needed a tool, and I researched, couldn't find it, so I got an innovation voucher and built my own. And as soon as I showed it to peers, they all went, oh my God, that's what we all need. And that was the beginning of Veri.
That was the beginning of Veri. Brilliant, brilliant. So Veri has been around about 2 years now?
2 years. We launched
Okay.
in October 2016, so we're now 2 years old.
Okay. And when we were talking earlier on, you were telling me, you know, when I was back in Northern Ireland and I had very young kids, and even when you came back to Kilkenny, first of all, you wouldn't have been able to, or maybe had the wherewithal to go out there and kind of set up a tech company, which is effectively what you've set up in the last couple of years. You were a single mum when you came back to Kilkenny. So there was a lot of challenges there, and yet you kind of used all of that experience that you had in training to then at a certain point go, wait a second, I'm free relatively, I have the ability and the knowledge and the ambition, right, to take this on now?
Yeah, and I think a lot of women, you know, during their career have sort of periods of up and down, and I like getting things done, and sometimes you can only do so much. But when the scope opened in terms of what I could do, because my kids were moving on to college, this opportunity came, and I remember at the time thinking, I need to go and do a master's now, or I need to go off and, you know, step myself back up again. And this opportunity presented itself, and I've thrown myself into it now. I think the master's might have been easier. It's been very hard work, but it's been really, really rewarding, and I'm learning every single day, so it's been great.
So you love it?
Yeah, I love it, and I have a wonderful team. I mean, we had some work to do yesterday, and I was getting emails from 2 of my main people at midnight last night, and I just think it's amazing when you initiate something and then everybody wants, you know, you have a nice tight team and everybody wants it to work. It's kind of like another child.
Yeah.
And we're all, you know, bringing this child up and hoping it'll be a rock star, you know.
Yeah.
So.
That's what's great about small teams, is because everybody is so invested in making it happen, and everybody is so recognizing the dependency of one on the other, right?
Absolutely.
Whether that's small teams within a large organization, or in our cases like in a startup building up. But it is so cool when you see people working their butts off just to make things happen for the company. I think that's really exciting. So funding. You have just closed, I believe, your second round of funding. Walk us through that journey. And, you know, sometimes I'm afraid that people kind of think that it was easy and, you know, I knew what to do at every step. But you were really learning that whole thing, like the business itself, as you went along, right?
Yeah, and I think even though I've had a good career, I never worked sort of in a multinational or anything like that. So I never was really, you know, I was always... My mindset was, you know, bootstrap, you know, get to, you know, don't take on debt, don't give away any part of your business, all of that. But once we launched 2 years ago and things started moving for us, it became very apparent very quickly that, you know, we wouldn't be able to sustain ourselves. And I think sometimes the message isn't the correct one that you're giving as a startup, that, you know, it's all about VCs and you have to chase this huge money. I think validating the product and working really closely with clients as design partners, they don't just validate you. In our case, they've actually come in and invested, and we have a new construction company called Robert Quinn Construction. They're really innovative, and they're a family business, but they've been around for 30 years, but they just recently built the MSD factory down in Carlow, and they, you know, they're like a lot of the others. The Irish Red Cross was their first client, and their training manager was amazing because she was progressive enough to think that, you know, she would be able to digitize a huge organization with 3,000 volunteers. So it's about those early stage customers that believe in you and help you make your product better. Because to tell you the truth, the product 2 years ago wasn't great, and I'm really proud of what we have today. But that's all down to the customers, and then that validation and initiated angel investment. We raised 200 last year, and then we closed this seed round this year with 250. So we just raised 450,000. But by angels that are, some of them are clients and that have really been very close to us. Now I think that in 18 months' time, should we achieve what we want to achieve, and what I think we can, VCs are obviously the next step.
Right.
But I had the opportunity to go abroad to California and New York this year, and we won Google Adopt a Startup last year.
Great.
And I sat in front of 3 or 4 VCs that said, you know, you go to $1 million, we'll give you between 5 and 20, with the view of, you know, multiplying that by 10x. And it was all like so simple, but actually that's not, you know, people have a vision of that, but it's the hard work in the interim is the really important part. And I think our hard work is starting to pay off now, and we've just opened an office in Belfast and launched the construction product, so we're really pleased.
Great, because you were saying earlier on before we started the interview that, you know, when you were doing kind of startup programs and training yourself, when you were setting up the business, that the conversation around the table with other entrepreneurs was always around funding. Whereas you were listening to those conversations, but you were kind of like, well, how do I get a product that people actually want to buy? And I love hearing that, because people do think sometimes that funding is the starting point, but it actually, and you were very clear, funding kind of came in at a point where you had something that was selling.
Digitization, disruption, even if it's B2C or B2B, the whole important thing is that it is a problem. There is a definitive problem there, and it needs a solution. And I think sometimes people, and well, I'm actually guilty of it, you get so close and it becomes your baby.
Yeah.
You know,
Oh yeah.
You don't want to hear your baby's ugly, so it's hard to go out in front of people. But as soon as you get to clients, they'll be very quick to tell you. And it's not simple in front of clients, you know, it's hard work. I mean, especially in a disruptive environment, because you're replacing something that wasn't there before. So it's quite difficult to, you know, to get people to be innovative enough to take that step.
Yeah.
You know? But I always think, like 2 years ago, if you went into a restaurant and somebody had an iPad taking your order in Ireland, you'd have been shocked, you know. Whereas now you'd nearly think there's something wrong with the restaurant if they don't do it.
Yeah.
And I think this digitization will come to every sector, and so I think if you're a female entrepreneur and you have an idea and you have some subject matter expertise, I think, you know, you should be brave enough to take that step, because you're just getting to the market before everybody else. And you know, the journey is an absolutely amazing one. It's been really, really good. We're on a trajectory now, and we've started getting proper momentum, which we're really pleased about. But to be 100% honest, I'd love to sell the company.
Yeah.
I think the company is a really complementary product to e-learning or to a learning management system. So I think that we should be well placed. We're already partnering with a couple of fairly successful e-learning companies to provide end-to-end solutions. So yeah, I'd love to sell the company, because I've worked hard. I had my kids young, and it's been fairly full on for the last 25 years. So hopefully in 5 years' time I might be able to relax a bit and smell the roses.
Yeah, well, an exit is a great result.
Yeah.
So, and you know, you're sitting here and the company is growing really fast. So in 5 years' time, you could be selling a large, successful global company, and I'm sure that you will, knowing you.
And give payback to the investors who have been really, you know, so critical. Payback to the team, the early stage team that have worked so hard. So it'd be lovely to be able to do that.